All right, good morning. Today is just a sec. All right, good morning, Grant. Perfect timing. So I'm just starting up right now. As it says right here in the email I sent out this morning, today I'm going to go over select from 6 and 7. All right, there is a reason for that, and I'll mention it in just a minute. All right, tomorrow, I'm going to give you the whole period to work on this pretest. I emailed the pretest to you today. It's an extension of the pretest you took last week. We'll talk about it at the end of class today, but I'm going to give you the entire period to work on it because I'd really like you to take a look at what's in there and ideally at least understand what's in there. So we'll go over that on Wednesday. If it takes the whole period, fine. If it takes an hour, whatever. All right. And as it says, any remaining time will Thursday will be your hands-on test. That test will be emailed to you by 7 a.m. Thursday. It'll be due at midnight Thursday, and I will go over the test when you first get it. All right. Now, one thing I want to mention to you is I did some grading this week, and you know that. And I still have some to do. All right. I have a couple people in the class who, because of illness or different kinds of obligations, have fallen a little bit behind. And I wanted to, before I went and did the hands-on tests for you, what I did, I wanted everybody to take it because I didn't want people to be doing what I did. All right. Friday will be our typical lab day. Next week, we're going to have a lot of lecture on Monday and Tuesday, and if necessary, even into Wednesday. It's a little early to tell you this, but just so you know, next week, so a week from today is the 3rd. Next week, we only meet 4 days. Friday of next week, which is the 7th, is, depending on your religious perspective, it's either Good Friday, religious observance, or what they like to just call a fall day off or a spring day off. But there will not be any class on that day. Okay, so let's get going. Your chapter 6 and 7 homework will be due this Sunday. Your chapters 8 through 11 homework will be due 2 weeks from this Sunday or 3 weeks from yesterday, depending on how you want to look at it. All right. Now, I got an email yesterday from one of the students in this class who's doing extremely well in the class, who said, I really had no problem at all with HTML. I had problems maybe with CSS, but I'm having a hard time kind of really getting into JavaScript. And it's understandable. As you probably would guess, at least in my opinion, out of the three things, HTML is probably the easiest, JavaScript is probably the hardest, and CSS is probably in the middle. Now, you may not agree with that, and that's totally fine. But the person said to me, how can I really kind of get into this more? And, one thing I've been pushing on you all semester are these W3 schools tutorials. I think that's a great place to start. Now, you may agree, and if you look in here, there's a ton of stuff. I mean, I'm going. I'm still going. There's much more in here than what we'll cover. All right. Do I know everything that's in here? Of course not. All right. But I think that's a great place, like I said, to start. Another place that you may or may not be interested in, and that is this Mozilla Developer Network. So it's developer.mozilla.org. And if you just go out to there, all right, if you look out there, someplace in here, they've got an entire JavaScript tutorial. All right, you might have to search for it, but references, guides, there, JavaScript. All right, and there's tons of stuff in here as well. I don't mean that I want you to spend 100 hours going through this stuff, but if you get stuck on something, or you want to know more about something, you know. The other place, and I go out here, I literally have taken well over 100 online classes at udemy.com, udemy.com. Some people call it Udemy. It doesn't matter. All right. But the point is on this stuff, if you start going through here, and for example, if I come in here and I type in JavaScript, all right, there are literally 10,000 results. So you can come in and you can start to filter these. All right. And there's different ways that you can filter this stuff. Okay. And if I keep going down here, it's in here someplace. I don't know where. So I couldn't remember how to do this. There, it was under price. So I said, well, how many free things are there? And you'll notice there's a lot of them. All right. These are all free things that are out there that you can take. And there's all sorts of them. So I looked at a couple of them. Not a lot of them, but I looked at a couple of them. And one of the ones that was in here that I thought sure wasn't bad, it was called JavaScript Essentials. And you'll notice if you look in here, where was it? There's 39 lectures in 6.5 hours. I wouldn't sit and watch it in one day, but there's a bunch of intro stuff. And then notice that 3.5 hours in here is on the basic syntax of JavaScript. So that's something you could take a look at, especially if you're having problems with this. And then he's got an hour and a half on the DOM, which is what we're going through right now. All right. All I'm trying to get across to you is there are literally hundreds, and I would even change that to say thousands. All right. Thousands of examples out there that you can take a look and at least it would give you a start, if nothing else. All right, as far as what to take a look at. Now, you're not going to agree with everything that's in there. Some of the people may be hard to understand. Some of them you just may not like listening to, etc. But you've got a lot to choose from. I'll just leave it at that. All right, so we're going to go through a few of these right now. And the first one we're going to go through is this upgrade the MPG application. The reason I'd like to go through this one is twofold. First, it'll allow me to explain a few things. And second, what I ask you to do for at least part of the pretest is very similar to this. So right now, they give you a working version of this miles per gallon calculator. I'm going to bring this up in just a second. It works. It works. The problem is that what it does is if you put in a number in here that's less than 0 or a non-numeric for one of these, it gives you an alert. And the bad thing about using an alert is literally it stops you in your tracks. An alert is modal, M-O-D-A-L, meaning you have to answer it before you can go on. And a lot of people find alerts really, really irritating. All right. So when we look in here, as far as what we're going to do, it's these 5 things. So open the application in this folder, run it, click the Calculate MPG button to see that an error message is displayed as an alert. In the HTML file, add a span element after the first input. And what they want is they want to span here, and they want to span here. And what's going to happen is when the program starts running, all right, when you first run it, that span will have a red asterisk in it, meaning that the field is required. All right. And if you come in here into either this field or this field, if you come into either one of them and you make it non-numeric or you make it negative or 0 or negative, it's going to change to this message or it's going to change to this message. When you look at it, it's the same message. All right. But if you put in something valid, of course, it's going to do the calculation and it's going to put the result here. And that result, as you can see, is in a read-only text box. So that's number 2. So number 3, enhance the data validation so it displays the error messages instead of in the alerts. All right, we just mentioned that. Number 4, if the user entries are valid, clear the contents of the span elements. All right, in other words, nothing should show here or here, nothing. So if I put in here 300 right there, if I put in 300 and if I put 12 in right there, and I click calculate MPG, it should say 25 here, and both of these should be blank. All right. And finally, if you click the clear entries button, what should happen is, as it says, it should set the contents of each element back to an asterisk. And if it doesn't do so, we'll also, if you click clear, we'll make sure that anything that's in here and in here and in here is removed. These two get changed to asterisks, and our focus goes back to here. So there's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that we want to have happen if you click the clear entries button. All right, so with that, let's take a look at it. All right, so this is under labs, and it's chapter 6, and it's the MPG. So I'm going to open that up with code. And if we take a look at it now, again, just to show you this, all right, this is the way it looks right now. And if I run it, in fact, let me just bring this up too. All right, come on. Well, usually it works if I drag that up there like that. There we go. All right, but if I come up here and I do this, let me close this. Come on, close. And I run this. As I mentioned to you before, if I come in here and I put in 300 and I put in here 12 and I click calculate, it says 25, totally fine. If I click clear entries, it clears them. I wish you would have put the cursor there. It doesn't. We'll fix that in a minute. But again, if we put in something that's blank here, we get miles driven must be a valid number greater than 0. All right. One thing, for lack of better words, one thing that's kind of bad about doing it this way with alerts too, is there's actually, if I click calculate MPG right now, this isn't a real big thing because we only have 2 fields in which we're inputting information. But technically, if I click it right there, I have 2 errors, but it's only showing me 1. We'd like to fix that as well. So this is all the stuff that we're going to go over. All right. But again, it does work the way it is. Well, we want to make it, for lack of better words, we want to make it work better. Now, one of the things that I did, and I think I sent you this yesterday, if I didn't, shame on me, but I took everything because, again, with the way that it works with Murach, is they put everything in the same folder. So for each one of these problems we're going to go over today, I move the CSS into a CSS folder. All right. I moved the JavaScript into a JS folder. And of course, my index.html is in a place all by itself. All right. So let's take a look at what's in here right now. I am to the point where I don't think, you have to please correct me if I'm wrong, any of you. All of that should make sense. Everything that's in there by now should make sense. All right. Also, I'm finding that in a lot of these problems, even when I try to come up here and put in my script tag and use a defer and etc., it still seems to be working better with that script tag being down on the bottom. I'm not going to fight it. That's fine. I'll leave it down there. I don't care. All right. But what you have to be able to understand is, okay, this is the text box that we're entering the miles driven. This is the text box that we're entering the gallons used. This is the text box that has our MPG, and these are our 2 buttons. Now, you might look at that and go, of course I understand that. Well, you know what? If you do, that's great. And I really mean it. I'm not trying to be funny or anything. That's great. All right. But the reason I'm telling you this is what we want to do is after the gallons, we want to come down here and we want to put in a span. And in that span, all we want in here is an asterisk. And we want to do the same thing up here. That's it. Now, don't worry, it won't be the right color. I don't care. But notice now when I put that in, now I get the asterisks. And I think they're the right color because we already had the code was already in the CSS, okay, to make them red. And it even, again, regardless, it doesn't matter. All right. But what I want you to understand, first of all, since these are spans, if we made them divs, they'd go on a new line. We don't want them in a new line. We want them on the same line that the text box is on. All right. The other thing I would have done, now they didn't do this. Murach did not do this. I would have, is, you know what, we're expecting that to be a numeric. So I'm going to put a number here, and I'm going to put a number here. Plus, they say in there that this can't be 0 or negative. So I could put in here min equals 1. And I can put that in for both. Now, you can make your own determination as to whether or not that makes the program run better. All right, but it will look a little different now. So if I save this and I run it again, all right, you'll notice now I've got these. Now I can still manually go in and type in -88 and -77, and I get that same message. However, if I try to put, it doesn't work anymore. So I've already solved a little bit of my problem. The only thing I have to check for now is it being empty. I can, if I do an is NaN, that does check for it being empty, because if it's not a number, or if it's empty, it is not a number. But all I'm trying to tell you is there are ways that we can make this program a little bit better. All right. And now that's my opinion. You may not agree that I'm making it better. All right. So we've come in here into the HTML file. And so far, I have come in and I have changed the type to number for miles driven. And I made the minimum 1. All right. And we added the span with the asterisk. Then we did the same thing, number, min 1, and this. We did the same thing with that one. Now this last one, this is a disabled text box. We can make it number. It sure wouldn't hurt anything. But because of the fact that it is disabled, really and truly, there's not much more we can do with it. All right. It doesn't make sense to put something in there like a minimum and a maximum. That makes absolutely no sense. All right, because that's something that's being calculated anyway. All right. Okay, and again, the only other things that I've added in here is I changed because I put the mpg.css in a CSS folder, and I put the mpg.js into a JS folder. All right. So that's, that's everything there. So, again, if you have questions, please stop me at any time. But I'm going to jump into the miles per gallon here. All right. And just so you know, when you do this, there are multiple ways this can be done. I want to say that again. There are multiple ways that this can be done. All right. Now, the stuff that we put in here, this must be greater than all that stuff. I'm just getting rid of all of it right now. Now, I could highlight all of it, hit delete, and it's gone. Not a problem. I can do that. But I don't want to do that. I want to be able to go back and take a look at what I've done, possibly later to be able to go back and compare, contrast, whatever. So I'm just going to use a multi-line comment and get rid of all of it. All right. Now, the next thing that's in here, this is kind of a neat example, because what this is it shows a lot of, what do I mean? It shows how to use an arrow function. It shows how you can take a constant or a function and make it a constant. It shows how you pass things into a function. And it even shows how you can manipulate the function answer. I like mine to 2 decimal places instead of 1. All right. But what that is, that's this right here. I'm gonna put something in here just so you see it. In fact, I'll keep it down here. In the old-fashioned way that we would write these functions. And when I say old-fashioned, there are millions, if not billions of lines out there that still use this old-fashioned way because it works. But I can come out here and type in function, calculate MPG, and I'm going to pass in miles, and I'm going to pass in gallons. And then I'm going to say in here, return miles divided by gallons. And the same way they did it here, let's put it in parens and say dot to fixed 2 or 1 that they did. It doesn't matter. All right. Now, what we've done is not really, anything astronomical. All right. But we did take this function that previously in green here existed over what, 4 lines, and put it into 1 line. These two things work exactly the same way. I could totally replace this one with this one or vice versa. There's other ways this can be done as well. But what we're doing here, and the reason I like their example, is what we're doing is we're creating a constant. The constant is going to hold the result of this function. We can make it a constant because we're not changing its value after it's been set. Let me say that again. We are not changing its value after it has been set. All right. Okay. We are also passing in 2 parameters. Miles, which is going to be whatever we entered into the text box for miles, which has been parse floated, and the same thing with gallons. All right. Then we're telling it to take the miles, divide it, take the result, change it to 2 decimal places, and then assign it to calculate MPG. And if you can understand that, that's probably the hardest part of this, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth. All right. So we've got this thing down here that's called process entries. All right. And let's see, what do we have in here? We've got miles equal parse float, miles, gallons equal parse float, gallons. All right. Down here at the bottom, down here, we only want to call calculate MPG if our miles was within range. In other words, it was a number that was greater than 0, and if our gallons was within range. Again, in other words, it was a number and greater than 0. If that doesn't happen, we don't want to go on. All right. We only want to go and run this if both our miles and our gallons were in range, within range. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create another variable, and you can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to call it is valid, and I'm going to set it equal to true. Oops. We're going to assume, and again, I'm using what the author provided. I don't put the semicolons in. You can if you'd like to. All right. All right. But this is valid. I'm assuming when we start, I'm assuming, yes, what we're going to put in is valid. And if we find out that it's not valid, we're going to have to change this. All right. So what do we have here? Okay. The first thing is we've got if it's not numeric and if it's less than, or if it's less than 0, now we're doing this alert. All right. We don't want that to be an alert anymore. We do not, I'm saying this again, we do not want this to be an alert. All right. So I'm just going to, for now, I'm going to comment this out. We also don't need this focus and select. What we want to do, remember this, what we want to do is if this was bad, all right, then what we want to do is we want to take this span that was in here with the asterisk and change it to an error message. All right. Well, one thing we can do, we don't have to do it like this, but one thing we can do is we can come up here, we can create another couple of constants. In fact, one more. I'm going to say, whoops, const, and I'm just going to say here message. All right. Constants that I'm creating here, I'm making in uppercase. Again, you don't have to do that, but I'm going to say equals must be a valid number greater than 0. That's a little different than what the author put in. To me, it's more descriptive. I use the greater than sign and the number 0. All right. So what I want to have happen is I want to tell JavaScript that I want you to take this message and I want you to put that message right here. And then I'm going to check again for gallons. And if gallons is out of whack, I want you to take the same message and put it there. All right. So there's different ways this can be done. I'm going to come in and do it like this. I'm going to say, remember, this one is called miles. The other one is called gallons. All right. So I'm going to say miles dot next element sibling dot text content. What does that mean? Basically, next element sibling is what's next to the text box. What's next to the text box? That span. All right. And I want to set that equal to message. Oops, I forgot my equal sign. Like that. That should change that. All right. Now we can check it right away. So I can come back in here and I can do a save. I can come back in here and run this again. I'm going to leave it blank. Must be a valid number greater than 0. Great. That's exactly what I wanted to show right there. And I'm going to have the same thing here in just a minute when I make the same changes here. But you'll notice that if I come here now, type in 300 and I type in 12 and I click, wow, it's still there, even though it's valid. We didn't add that yet. We will in just a minute. Now, is this working? When I click clear entries, does this go away and become this? No. So that's got to be fixed as well. All right. But I'm trying to do a little bit of code, test it, and then go back, show you what's happened, etc. So what I want to do here is, again, I don't want this and I don't want this. I'm going to copy this line right here and I'm going to change this so it doesn't say miles, but it says gallons. Try that again. All right, and I'm going to save it, go back to here, run it again, and now I should get both my error messages. I didn't. Well, I screwed up someplace, so let's see if we can figure out where. All right. So right now, okay, this says if this, do this, else if. That's not how I want to do this. If, let me just show you what I want us to do, okay? I'm going to move this down. Don't worry, it'll give me errors, but I'm going to fix them right away. This is data validation, and I'm validating the miles. This is if the miles were invalid. What do I want to do if the miles were valid? I want to say else, all right? And I want to take this, and I don't want to set it equal to message. I want to set it equal to nothing. Just like that. All right. And then I want to do the same thing down here. So this else that was here now becomes an if. And I'm going to do the exact same thing in a moment. All right. Now, normally I would leave these here so I could go back and look at them, but I'll remove them just so you can see everything, hopefully at least, that's going on in here. So if miles was not numeric, or it was negative or less than or equal to 0, set it equal to that message. Otherwise, take that span and set it equal to nothing. Then do the same thing down here with the gallons. All right. Now let's take a quick look at it. So it should messages hopefully now, and it does. I haven't fixed clear yet. All right. And remember that if I do put in now a valid number, all right, that one at least went away, but it didn't here. I'm either missing something or I somehow screwed up. So let's look. All right. Now I've got here else this, and that is correct. But there's different ways. Again, there are different ways that I can do this. I'm going to pull this statement out, and I'm going to put exactly what we put up here, except with gallons. So I'm going to say $, all right. Now, if I go back, I'm still not done. But if I go back now and I put in nothing, I get my messages. But if I put in valid values, both of those go away. All right. But now it's not calculating my miles per gallon. Let's fix that now. We only want to calculate miles per gallon if what we did in here, was valid. So now I can say if is valid. All right, so if it is valid, all right, I'm still not going to be done after this. Okay, that's fine, except guess what? If this is not valid, I'm never resetting it. So right here, that was an invalid case. So I can say is valid equal false. And I can do the same thing down here. Is valid equal false. Now I'm going to save this and I'm going to run it again. I'm still not done, but it's almost there. So with nothing, there's my errors. Clear still doesn't work, so we'll have to fix that. All right. But when I come in here and put in something valid now, okay, those do go away and my calculation works. My clear entries works, except I don't have the 2 asterisks there. We'll set those up. And hopefully you would agree with me. Taking this from the top, so it's not numeric or it was 0 or less, then we want to print out our message. This message right here must be a valid number. If what we put in here was valid, then we're making sure that what had the asterisk in it now has nothing in it. Then we do the same exact thing with our gallons. Exactly the same. Except we swap out miles and swap in gallons. All right. And again, if it's bad, we'll put the error message there. Otherwise, we'll put nothing there. And if it's bad, not only will we put the error message there, we'll set is valid to false. Then only if is valid, remember that's a shortcut for saying is valid equal true. That's a shortcut. All right. So only if it's true do we want to call this calculation. Now, what do we have left to do in here? We've got this left to do. What do I mean? This is right. That cleared it. That cleared it. That cleared it. But we want to go back and we want to set our text content back to the asterisk. What the heck does that mean? Well, let me put this in here twice. All right, now I'm going to change this one to miles. And now what I want is I want this to go back to a red asterisk. So anytime I click the clear entries button, it's going to do exactly what we mentioned before. It's going to remove whatever value was in the miles text box. It's going to remove whatever value was in the gallons text box. It's going to remove whatever value was in the MPG text box. It is going to set the span that is right to the right of the miles text box to a red asterisk, and set the span to the right of the gallons text box, again, to a red asterisk. One more thing I'd like to do in here is I'd like to set the focus. All right, so I'm going to say $ miles dot focus. All right, to my knowledge, we're done. I want to mention one more thing before I run it one last time and we go on. All right, now notice here, basically all of the stuff we're putting in here, everything we're putting in, starting on line 2, I mean the use strict is a thing by itself, but going from line 2 all the way down to line 62, that's just JavaScript. And then here we're telling it once the DOM is loaded, we want to set this up. The reason I'm telling you this is in one of the examples they show in chapter 4 in the book, they put the DOM content loaded on the top and they had everything inside of there. That's another way you can do it. All right, so there's always more than one way of doing the same thing. All right, let's take one last look at this. So let me do a file, save all, go back to here. If let's put in a valid number here and not one there, we get our message. Okay, everything looks like it worked. Let's put in something invalid here and something valid here. Still get it, that's good. Let's do it the other way. Okay. Okay, those all appear to be working. The clear appears to be working, and it's putting our cursor there. And when we start to run the program, the cursor is there. Finally, if we do put in something in here that works, there it is to 2 decimal places. We have nothing there. When we click this, all of the 3 of these should be, the values should be removed. We should have the 2 red asterisks back, and we should have our cursor in there. And it looks like we do. All right. Any questions on that one, Grant?
I have a bit of questions about the kind of the new stuff with the next element sibling. I know that's related to what we talked to in the textbook, but could you go over that and how that's determined?
Sure. Okay. All right. So when we take a look over here, I think you're asking about this. So what
Yes.
what it's saying is the next element, sibling, means it's got to be on the same line. So when we go back and we take a look at miles in here, what is on the same line as miles? And the answer is that. Now, I know right here, it is physically typed on the next line, but we could actually move it right up here if we wanted to. So what we're saying is the next element, so whatever comes after this, and we want to be able to change its text content. So that is its current text content. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, I think I get it. Thank you.
Okay.
And that's all with the DOM, and we don't have to do anything with that. That's just determined
That's
automatically.
just something that is a built-in DOM function.
Okay. And
All
that's
right.
based on how the HTML is set up?
Yes. Well, yeah, you can look at it that way, sure.
Okay.
All right. So that's the first one. All right. And again, any of the rest of you who are watching this, if something doesn't make sense, it is going to be your responsibility to email me and let me know. Now, I was on yesterday afternoon, and I had people emailing me, this won't work, this won't work. And I try to turn around stuff and answer it as quickly as I can. I mean, weekends are hard, and just so you know, now next Saturday, the 1st, this is not an April Fool. Next Saturday is the Rankin-Wentzville open house. So I will literally be at the Rankin campus from 8 o'clock until 12 or 1 o'clock on Saturday. All right. So what I'm saying is, if you were to get a hold of me on Saturday morning, I probably won't have time to work on it because as potential students come in, I'm trying to work with them and let them know about the program. All right. So sounds like there's no other questions. So I'm going to stop that one and let's look at the next one, which is test scores. All right. Before we do, let's look at in the book what they say about test scores, or in our PDF, whatever you want to call it. So that was the first one. We just did 6-1. This is 6-2. All right. In this exercise, you start with declarations for 2 arrays, an array of names and an array of scores. Then we add an event handler that displays the name and the score in the text area right here. So again, what we're doing is I can come in here conceivably and add an unlimited number of names. So notice they put in Mike. So if they were click add to the array, it would add it. And if they click display scores, now on the bottom right down here, you'd have Mike equal 99. All right. So hopefully that made at least a little bit of sense. So again, what are we supposed to do here? Well, we've got 4 things to do. All right. The first says open the folder and run it. Says if you can enter a name and a score, the add to array button to add names and scores to the arrays, but you can't use the other button to display it yet because that's what they ask you to do. Look at the JavaScript code, that it starts with the declarations for the 2 arrays that each contain 4 elements to begin with. So in other words, they've been initialized. The names array is initialized, it looks like, with Ben, Joel, Judy, and Anne. And the scores array has been initialized with 88, 98, 77, and 88. All right. It says note 2 that the Java code includes the $ function, a DOM content loaded, and an add score function for adding that stuff. So in other words, some of the stuff that we want to do here has already been added for us. I'll just put it that way. Okay. All right. Add an event handler for the display scores button that displays the name and the scores, in the arrays as shown above. You will need to use the DOM content loaded event handler to attach this function to the click event in that button, the display scores button. All right, modify the event handler for the add to array button so that the data in the text area is cleared after a name and score are added to the arrays. So in other words, I've got Mike and 99 here, and after I click this button, it should both add it to the array, and then this should all clear out. All right, we're not really asked to do very much, to be honest with you. So let's take a look at this example here. All right, and then we'll go on and look at the one for chapter 7. All right, so again, I put all of this in here. As you see, I have separated it. So there's my CSS, there's my JS, all right, and there's my HTML. What I am going to ask is that when you do the next test, the next hands-on test, that you do that same thing. And the only way that I can do it, make sure people do it, is to set aside points for it. So either 5 points or 10 points or whatever. In fact, what I may end up doing is I may ask you to set it up like this with a CSS folder with your CSS file, with a JavaScript folder with your JavaScript file, and with your HTML here. And I may very well ask you to also go in and make sure that you validate both the CSS file and the HTML file. There is such a thing as a JavaScript validator. We're not going to get into it. There's also something that's called a linter, Linter, that will check for things. You probably don't want to use it because it expects you to write your JavaScript in a certain way. If you remember in the last example that I just put up a minute ago, I put my curly braces on their own line. I like to code that way. All right, the linter doesn't like that. So the linter will actually flag those lines as being in error. It wants to be on the same line. All right, and I don't like stuff like that, but we can look at that maybe at another time. So let's bring this up. So again, this is test scores. I'm again going to bring it up in code. There it is. So again, there's my JavaScript. It does that. There's my HTML. And if I close this and run the program currently, what you'll see is it doesn't give me errors, but if I say Jeff and I say 55 and I click add to array, it has been added and that looks like it's also cleared, but the display scores does absolutely nothing. So let's go in and start making changes so we can meet the requirements that we had in our program. Again, I have changed. So my style sheet is in the CSS folder. So my JavaScript is in the JS folder. All right. There's not a lot of changes, I don't think, that we have to make in here. Again, realize we've got this span here and we've got a span here. What does that mean? Right now they're empty, but potentially we could put something in there if we want to or need to do so. I'm not even saying that we're going to do anything there, but a lot of times you'll put a div or a span or something in so that you can write things later on in the program. All right. Okay. And again, we've set up IDs for both. That's good. And we've got a div down here. And that div just has our buttons in it. And we've got that text area, all right, that says scores display. I don't even know if we have to add anything in here. We'll look in just a bit and see if I'm mistaken, but I don't think I am. So let's come in here. We've got our use strict. Remember what that is. That basically tries to force you into being a better programmer. So here we've got an array called names. Here we've got an array called scores. If down here, instead of using names, we used first name. I don't know why, but we did. Like, let's say we did here. It's going to flag it and give us an error. So we've got this. These are our two arrays that we're declaring. Since we're declaring them over and above everything else we're doing, those arrays are now global. They can be used anywhere in this application, and we don't have to pass them around. We've got our shortcut here, or our alias, whatever you want to call it. All right. And then we've got our add score. So let's see what's here. All right. So the name equals, grab it from whatever we just put in there for name. The score for what we put in for score. We also want to do a parse int on it. All right, that makes sense. And we don't want the name to allowed to be empty. All right. And we don't want the score. One thing we could do, don't have to do this, but I'm going to come in here and say const min score, and I'm going to set it equal to 0, const max score, and I'm going to set that equal to 100. Again, you don't have to do that. But if I decide I'm going to do this and later on, oh, I'm also want to do my quizzes in there, and quizzes are worth 50 points. I only have to change it here. All right. And if this is a really, really, really big program, I might have that 0 and 100 a lot of places in my code. All right. I like using constants like this. So here's our const add score. The name is this. The score is this. Remember, this can fail. And it can fail if either we leave it blank, or we put something non-numeric in it, or we put something out of range in it. Let's go back and quickly look at this. And again, the score, I would have made that a number. And you can put these on multiple lines. I would have said the min is equal to 0. And the max is equal to 100. You don't have to do that. But all you can try to do is make it as simple as possible for the person running the program. All right. And I used to have worked with another instructor, and I would hear him tell his class, it was not me. I would never do this. But he would say, hey, assume everybody running your program is a flippin' idiot. No, I say just assume they're naive to the process and they may not know what it is they're supposed to do. So we're trying to make it as hard for them to fail at this as possible. That's all. All right. So let's go back to here. So as it says, we want to come in and check these values here for validity. All right. So again, as I've been doing, I'm just going to put this on multiple lines because I like the way that it looks better. You may or may not agree with that. So what we're doing here is we're validating the name. The other thing I would do is I'd put in signs. Remember, that is both checking for a match and the right identity. It's recommended that when you are testing things, that you very rarely, if ever, use a double equal sign. You use the triple equal sign. So if that name was empty, all right, notice again, we're using that next sibling text content. That is the empty span. All right. So it's going to say here, this field is required. All right. And I don't think I can make this any smaller. Let me put this on 2 lines just so you can see it. There. All right. And we're setting our is valid to false. Otherwise, we're making sure that has nothing in it, which right now it has nothing in it. There is nothing after that span. We could put an asterisk there. If we wanted to, we could put a red asterisk there and there, like we did before. All right. Now here we're validating. It says check entries for validity. I'm going to change this to validate name field. All right. And then down here, I'm going to change this or add this, validate score field. All right. So if it's not numeric or it's less than, now I can say min score, or it's greater than, and I can say max score. All right. So if it is one of those, again, you can see what I'm doing here. And I don't care. I mean, this is all a matter of personal style. If you like it being on the same line, then do that. All right. And I'm only putting this on multiple lines so you can see all of it. So again, if the score is non-numeric, or it's less than 0, or it's greater than 100, all right, again, we're going to change that empty span to you must enter a valid score. All right, and this field is required. All right. Now, we could have put anything in here that we wanted, but I'm going to change this to you must enter a score. All right, and I'm going to just say, I'm going to hard code it in, but between, from 0 to 100. I'm trying the best I can to let the user not only know they made a mistake, but what the mistake they made was. All right. Okay. So otherwise I'm doing this. Setting that span. It might be equal to nothing right now, but I am anyway. It doesn't hurt anything. So down here, this is what I want to do if everything that I put in here was valid. All right. Names, equal name. Scores, scores.length equals score. All right. Name dot value, that's going to clear that out. Score dot value, that's going to clear that out. All right. But there's one more thing we want to do where we're displaying the scores. You're going to see all of this in a moment when I run it. All right. And then after we go and clear everything, we're resetting the focus back to the to the name. All right. Now, the only thing we're not doing in here, okay, give me 5 more minutes. I know we're running over a little longer than we usually do, but I'd like to finish this one. We're not displaying the scores right now. So let's write that routine. So const display scores. We're making sure if there was any junk in there, we're clearing it out. This is a standard for loop. Remember how it's got everybody's name in there. Then it says equal, and then the score. And when we get done with that, we also want to put in, we want everyone to appear on their own line. So we'll put in a \n at the end. All right. Now, when we get done, we are filling up this thing called score display. But when we get done, we want to be able to set that text area to our final score display. So we want to say $, and that was called scores display dot value equal scores display. Whoops. All right. And then finally at the bottom, the only thing that we have to add in here is we're never calling this thing right here, this display scores. So we have to add that in there. And that's for the other button. So we come in here and we say display scores dot add event listener. When we do a click event, we want you to call display scores. All right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it and make sure that it works. Okay. And then we will take a break and we will talk about it a little bit after the break. So if we leave this blank, okay, this field is required. You must enter a scores. That's good. All right. And if we do put in a name and we add it to the array, now they go away. And now when I click display scores, it should have Jeff on the bottom after the other four. And there it is. All right. So if I do another one in here and I'll say Mary, a student, she got 100. I can add that to the array and everything clears as it's supposed to. When I display, there's Mary. We can keep going in here and eventually, because you can see it's already given us a scroll bar, but this is going to get really big. All right. Now, we don't need a clear button in here because when we click the add to array, once we put in valid values, it does clear everything. Boom. So it's all cleared. All right. If we wanted to, we could add that. All right. It is 9:06. Let's take till 9:16. We're going to come back, talk about this one for about 5 minutes, and then jump into the one for chapter 7. So I'll see you at 9:16. All right, it is 9:16, so I'm going to continue on. Let's just take a minute over this program. So what did I change in here? Again, I came back in and I changed the score from a text to a number, and I gave it a minimum and I gave it a maximum. All right, and that's really about all I changed in here. And then looking in here, there wasn't a lot we changed. All right, we kept our two arrays, and we added two constants for the minimum score allowed and the maximum score allowed. We kept our alias. This didn't change, I don't believe, a bit. This didn't change. And this, we did do the validation. So if there was nothing in there, we said this field is required. And we set is valid or false. Otherwise, we made sure that that span had nothing in it. Then we did the same thing here. and we replace the 0 with min score. We replace the 100 with max score. All right. And again, if it was either non-numeric or out of range, we again change the message in the span from being blank to you must enter a score from 0 to 100. All right. Otherwise, there's nothing in there. If it was valid, what this is doing, just so you know, that is adding the name that we just entered into the names array. That is adding the name that we just entered, which is name, into the array called names. This is doing the same thing, but it's adding the score that we just added because it's valid, meaning we've got both a value in there for the name and the score that we entered was between 0 and 100. All right. Then we're taking what was in that name field and clearing it out because we're told to do that in the specs. And we're doing the same thing for the score and the scores display. That was just stuff we were asked to do. We were asked to do that in the requirements. Then we're setting the focus. Now we had to write this because this didn't exist previously. So this is new. This is where the scores display is going to be the contents that we put into the text area. So we're telling it to loop through, and every time you find a score, a name and a score, you have that current name equals that current score. Then when you get done, you put the whole thing into the text area. Finally, the other thing we had to add was this. We didn't have that in there before because we didn't have a routine that was called display scores. We do now. All right. And I'm hoping this makes sense, but just in case you're a problem, let's do one more thing in here. I thought about this during the break, and I'm doing this literally off the top of my head. I am, but we're going to come in here and we're going to put in average. All right. And we'll call it average. All right. I'm not going to set a minimum and a maximum, and I'm not going to set a span. There is no error message. But what I want is, so if you look at this now, we should have a new field in here. And there it is, average. All right. And it is a number field. Actually, we're not going to allow the user to put a value in there. So what we really should do is we should disable it. And even though I normally would make this a number, I'm going to make it text anyway, just so I don't have that kind of irritating little up-down spinner there. So let me do a save all and open it with live server. There you go. But it doesn't work right now. So again, if I put in Jack and I put in 44 and I click add to the array, still displays it there, but I'm not getting anything in for the average. That's okay. Let's see if we can get an average in here. All right. So remember, every time we're running through this, this is adding all that stuff. All right. Well, this is the scores display is just that. It's going to display all the scores. I'm going to put another variable in here that's called total points. And I'm going to set that equal to 0. All right. Then down here, I'm going to say, let's see, let's make 2 variables. We'll say total points, and we'll make another one. We'll call it, I don't know, test average. We'll set that equal to 0 as well. All right. Then down here, I'm going to say test average equal our total points divided by scores.length. So that should give us an average. All right. And now I can say $, what did we call it? I think it was just average. Dot value equal test average. And we'll do a two fixed on that to 2 decimal places. All right. So what I added total points. I added test average. One thing I didn't do is now I want to say, all right, total points plus equal scores sub I. So if the person got a 56, I'm going to add 56 to their total. Let's see if it works. I could have left something out. I could have done something wrong. We're going to find out right now. Now, when we first run this, all right, notice it's not displaying anything. Okay, but let's come in and let's put in, so I'll put in me, I'll put in 88, add to average, display scores. All right, it's got me in there. It doesn't have the average. Did I do something wrong? Hey, it's me. It's very well likely I did. Cannot set properties of null, setting value. So it doesn't like it here. Okay, it's telling me that it can be null. I've had this type of error before. So let's see. Test average equals 0. Test average. Dot to fixed. Ah, I didn't put a right there. I'm missing my pound sign. Let's put that back in there and see what that does to it, if anything. So let's close this and I'll go back and rerun it in just a second. So again, right here, that needs that. All right, so let's see. I think that will fix it, but let's see. All right, so John got a 23. Add to array, display scores, and there's our average. All right, and just for the heck of it, let's see if it's working. And the way I'm going to see whether or not it's working is I'm going to bring up the calculator and I'm going to say 88 plus 98 plus 7 plus 88 plus 23 equals 374. Divide that by 5 and you get 74.8. So I'm going to add one more in here. All right, so let me multiply that by 5 again. So it's 374 right now. I'm going to add Julie, and I'm going to say Julie got 100. So 100, and I'm going to divide that by 6 and see if that changes the average to a 79. So Julie, 100, add to array, display scores 79. Okay, just to show you, I mean, there's other stuff we could do as well. We could have printed out the highest score, the lowest score, etc. Average made the most sense to me because you can look at this, but again, if I had 15 scores in here, you'd have to search for it to find the biggest one and the smallest one. All right. Any questions on that particular problem?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, then let's look at the other one that's in here for chapter 7. So let me close this. And the one for chapter 7 is this rollover thing. So let me first bring it up and then let's look at the specs for it. All right, again, I put the CSS in there. The images were already in a folder. I've got the JavaScript file here, and I've got my index file there. So let's quickly look at the requirements for this. There we go. All right. Preload images and use a timer. In this exercise, you'll modify an image rollover application, so it preloads the images that are displayed when the original images are rolled over. Okay. In addition, create timers that cause the rollover images to be displayed when the page is first loaded. All right. So we are supposed to first open up the application, which I'll do in a moment, run it, move the mouse pointer over each of the two images to see that the original images will be replaced with another one when the mouse is in the image. Okay. Add JavaScript code to preload the rollover images. Images that are specified by the ID attributes of the image elements. All right. And then finally, add another timer that causes the original images to be displayed again 2 seconds after the page is loaded. Okay, hopefully that made at least a little bit of sense. So let's take a quick look at what's there. So again, this is in chapter 7. This is the rollover. And if I open that up right now and run it, it's partially working right now. All right. Notice if I put my mouse over it, I do believe one of the things they asked were for these to be on the same line, but that this part is working at least, that when I put my mouse over, they're changing. So it says, move your mouse over an image to change it, back out to restore the original. So all that's working. All right. Let's take a look at what we have in here right now. So this is our index file. Again, I have changed mine. In fact, I didn't. That should say, maybe I didn't change this one, I don't remember. That should be CSS, and that one was changed to JS. Okay, so there we go. Oh, I put the CSS over there. Don't know how I did that, but I did. All right, so in main here, not a whole heck of a lot of stuff in here, but we are going to have to at least look at it. All right, so fishing images. All right, move your mouse, yeah, etc., etc. All right. We are actually doing the preload right here. What do I mean? Well, take a look at what's in here. All right. Right now, we have a unordered list with 2 list items in there. One that says release.jpg and one that says hero.jpg. Now, that's the source, but notice the ID is actually set to the other one, deer and bison. All right. And hopefully, if that doesn't make any sense, it will hopefully make a little bit more sense when we take a look at the JavaScript. All right. So there's really nothing to change in here. Again, I put that over 2 lines because it was made it easier to read, and I fixed my own error that was in there. So let me do a file save all, and let me bring up the rollover. All right, again, we've got our use strict. So notice here, the author has done the DOM content loaded at the beginning. And as I already mentioned, there's different ways this can be done. All right. So it looks like we're going to have to add something here in just a moment because we've got a comment to preload the rollover image, but we're not doing that right now. So we'll come back to that in just a second. Process each image tag. 4, let image of images, all right, to have the old URL equal the image source and have the new URL equal the image ID. What the heck does that mean? Well, remember back here, we had set the image source and the image ID. So the first one was set to release in deer. All right. Now we're basically, for lack of better words, we're flipping them, which is what you think you do with a rollover anyway. All right. So let's come in here and preload the rollover image. All right. Well, you may remember this from chapter 7. You may not, but it's fairly simple. We're going to come in here and say const rollover image. We can call that whatever we want, but that's what it is. We're going to set that equal to a new image, and the rollover image dot source is going to be equal to this new URL that we set right here. All right. Now, when you look, here's the beginning of our for loop, and that's going down to the bottom of the program. So everything that we're doing in here, we're doing in this for loop. All right. And what else do we have in here? Well, we have set up the event handlers for him going over an image. We've got the mouse over and we got the mouse out. Now we're not done yet. We will be in just a moment, but we're not done yet. Okay, but let's do a file, save all. Let's go back to here and run it again. You'll notice one thing is they're now both on the same line. And the reason they weren't originally is because I had the CS, but they're all on the same line and it's working. What's not working, let's just count here. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. We're supposed to display a new image and an old image. And what did it say in our specs here? So basically, we ran it. We added the code to preload. That's been added. We want to add a timer that causes the rollover image to be displayed 1 second after the page has been loaded. And then, so that'll be in one timer. Then in another timer, we want to go back to display the rollover, the original image after 2 seconds. Again, if that confuses you because of the way I just said it, let's just take a look at the code. Oops, that isn't what we want. There we go. And there we go. All right. So when we come in here, we're setting up our image handler for hovering over an image. Let's come down here. We'll put in another comment that will say display new image after 1 second. All right. And then we're going to display the old image after 2 seconds. They're basically the same thing. So we're going to say set timeout. $1,000 means do it after 1 second. All right. And then we'll display the old image after 2 seconds. So again, look very similar to what we just did. Except previously we did an image source equal new URL. Now we're going to say it equals the old URL. And instead of taking 1 second, it will now take 2 seconds. So let's save it and run it, make sure it works, and then go back and kind of dissect it again. Okay, now we've got a slideshow. That'll happen. So watch. There, and it changed, but it only does it once. Well,
Professor, are you there? I can't hear you. I think I might have lost you.
Not double check. Says recording is working. Grant, can you?
Now again. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Don't know what happened. All right, but what I'm trying to do here is to see if I can make this an actual working slideshow. All right. So what I did was I changed these from what they were originally, which was a set timeout. I changed them to a set interval. And remember the difference between these. With a set timeout, it's a one-time shot. So that said, when the thing first started, show the new image after 1 second, then wait 2 seconds and display the old one back again. But by changing it from a set timeout to a set interval, I now have the equivalent of a working slideshow. Now, I personally would have done it like this and made it about 5 seconds. All right. It can be a little hard on the eyes, especially if you've got older eyes like me, but now notice. Okay. Now, if you don't like that, and that it's still doing the thing after 1 second too, which I don't like. And I guess I could have probably put that one in there. I don't know. I tried doing this before. That was when you probably when you lost me. But I'm going to see if I go back and change this. Make this one a set timeout and leave the other one a set interval. Doesn't like that. It's only doing it once when I'm doing the timeout. I'm not sure. I guess you do need both of them. All right. But I would probably, what I'm telling you is I would probably go in. I guess that must be an interval. Now, with some people, whoops, with some people making that 5 seconds like I did was too much. I thought 2 seconds wasn't enough. You can't even put it in, for example, I can put in 2.5 and I can put 2,500 in here. But this would be the kind of thing, if you were actually creating an application for someone, you'd have to look at it. All right. Okay, that was just meant to show you the difference between the two. So let's take a quick look at the code. Again, I didn't have to change anything in here. All right, I just put this over 2 lines. All right. But remember, what we're doing is we're flipping the source and the ID. All right, that's what we're doing in the program in here. All right. And in here, we already had this. We already had this. We had this. So I added these 2 lines to do the actual preloading. All right. And then we set up the 2 event handlers. Those were in here already. This is the mouse over. And with they're event listeners, but they're not timers. So as soon as you put the mouse in, it goes to the new URL. As soon as you put the mouse out, it goes back to the old one. All right. And then this was our set interval. And probably at least, you do need this because this is where you're going back to the new URL and to the old URL. All right. I'm just wondering if I make them both 2.5. What I'm trying to do is show you how you would create a slideshow and have it look fairly seamless, for lack of better words. Well, that sure isn't doing anything. So that isn't it. This works. All right. But it sure didn't like that. So either I typed it in wrong, set interval. Oops. Oh, no, that's okay. 500 doesn't like that. So make it back to with there. To me, it's a little bit, I don't even know what the right word is. It could look better. I don't like it when you run it. And it does that flip like that. I'd have to look at it to figure out why it's doing that. All right. So any questions on that particular example?
No, I don't think so. It's a little different, but I think it's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward still.
Yeah, this is the first one that we did that had anything to do with images. So, all right. And timers and the like. So, all right. So that was what I wanted to show you from there. That is all three of them. And Grant, I know you know this, and I believe everybody else knows this, but you're still supposed to do these. Even if I'm doing them in front of you, you're still supposed to do them. All right. It doesn't mean, oh, well, there's 6 problems here and he did 3 in class, so we only have to do 3. No. All right. So let's see. The sales tax calculator, I said I was going to let you try yourselves. The change calculator on these, I'm sorry, this is 6 and 7. We already did these. So let's see, temperature converter and test score array and modifying the facts. I'm going to let you do this one yourselves. It's really easy, I think, but that's easy for me to say. And for 7, we'll do the clock, and then you can figure out how to add the stopwatch to it. All right, so let me go back to 6.1. This one is a little different because in here we are working with radio buttons, which we haven't worked with in this context before. All right, so again, this is the one with the temperatures, converting the temperature. All right, so open the app. All right, and it says here, note the JavaScript file has some starting JavaScript code, including our alias, 3 helper functions, 3 event handlers, and a DOM content loaded. Review how Fahrenheit is that the helper function and the convert temp are incomplete. All right. Code the toggle display so that it changes the text in the labels for the text boxes to the parameters it receives. In other words, if I choose to go right now, if I say Celsius to Fahrenheit, it'll say enter C degrees and degrees Fahrenheit. But if I click the other one here, it'll now change to, it doesn't show it. So that should then change to enter F degrees and degrees Celsius. All right. And if we don't put a number in there, it should say you must enter a valid number for degrees. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything. So we'll take a look at that. All right, so let's take a look at that one. Also, and you don't have to do this, but let's also go in and we will add in there our own high and low for the temperatures. All right, so here at the convert temps, bring that one up. In code, as I've been doing here. Again, these haven't been touched. These are what the author gave you. All right, so what do we have here? Convert temps. And we've got the radio buttons. Let me move this over multiple lines so you can see everything that's in here. Do the same here. All right, I think that's about enough. All right, so what do we have here? Two radio buttons. Notice since they're radio buttons and we want to use them as a group, the name must be the same. Conversion type, but the IDs must be different. 2 Celsius and 2 Fahrenheit. All right, and then we've got this, degrees Celsius. I'm going to change this. I don't like the way it reads. So I'm going to say here, output or input Fahrenheit degrees. I'll just put FAR degrees. All right. And I'm going to say output degrees Celsius. All right. Okay. And we've got in here degrees computed. That looks like it's fine. All right, it might look a little funky. We'll take a look at it in just a second. So file, save all. Let's run this. Input FAR degrees, output degrees cell, but still doesn't do anything. And if I change this, that doesn't change. All right, so that's what we have to change. So let's go ahead and take a look at the JavaScript that they gave us and see what we have to do. All right, we've got our use strict, we've got our alias. And again, these are helper functions. What does that mean? Well, then what this means is rather than us putting the conversions in our code, what we can do instead is we can call code that will do the conversions for us. All right, that's it. That's really all that it means. Now, this toggle display isn't showing much, but what we have to do is we have to update the labels so that when you change from one radio button to the other, that changes as well. So let's see. And they were called, I think, degree label 1 and degree label 2. Yep, degree label 1 and degree label 2. Okay. And the other one will basically be the same thing, except I have to use a 2 instead of a 1. So this is degree label 2 equals label 2.text. And then finally, our the computed should be empty. Okay. And we want to select the text in our degrees text box. We're going to look at all of this. We're going to run it in just a second. Right. So that's what we've got so far. Let's save this and let's run it. It's not done yet. Notice, enter F degrees, enter degrees cell. All right, enter C degrees, output degrees. I got to change that to be FAR. So I guess I shouldn't have changed what the author had in there to begin with. All right, I tried to make it easier, but I think I made it worse. All right, so in here, let's see. what it said in here was input F degrees, I believe. And all we're doing is we're changing it from F to C. So, or enter, I think it said enter F degrees. And this said degrees Celsius, and the other one changed it to degrees Fahrenheit. Let's see if that fixed it back. Sorry about that. Okay, that says F. This is not changing back. Why is that? Doggone it. Well, we're going to have to look at that because I screwed up someplace in there, so I want to figure out where I screwed up. Fahrenheit to Celsius. Celsius to Fahrenheit. That looks correct. Degree label 1 is enter F degrees. Degrees entered. Label 2 is degrees Celsius. And that's degrees computed. That all looks correct. Let's go back to this. Take a look at our JavaScript here and make sure I didn't screw up anything there. All right. So again, we had use strict. We had our alias function, calculate Celsius, calculate Fahrenheit, toggle display, label 1 text. Oh, there I put 21. That's the problem. Probably was okay the way I had it, but that's okay. I'll leave it the way it is. So let's see when we change this now. So this is Fahrenheit to Celsius, Celsius to Fahrenheit. So for Fahrenheit to Celsius, this says enter F degrees and degrees Celsius. Now it says enter C degrees and degrees Fahrenheit. That's correct. It still doesn't work. Still doesn't work. We're going to fix that right now. All right. Sometimes I learn more from my screw ups than anything else. So the next thing we want to do in here is we want to work with our event handler function, the convert temp. All right. Now, if we wanted to, we could put a minimum and a maximum degrees in here. I mean, because if you put 1,000,000 in here, let's face it, if it's 1,000,000 degrees, it doesn't matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, we're all toast anyway. All right, but we could check that if we wanted to. All right, but they want us to write this convert temp, so let's write that. Well, first we need to get the user entry, so the const temp equal, they're probably going to put a whole number in there, so we could use a parse int, but just in case, let's use a parse float anyway. All right, so that'll have the temperature for us. So here I'm just going to say if is NaN temp. All right, so in other words, what are we doing in here? We're doing temperature validation. Okay. So if it's not, okay, what do we want to do? Well, I think was there something in here for a message? Thought there was, maybe there wasn't. No results. All right, well, we want to let the user know though. So do we have, maybe we were supposed to put one in there. I don't remember. So let's look. Button in here that said convert. Let's put a paragraph in here. We could make it a paragraph. We could make it a div. We could make it something else if we wanted to. We'll call it message. All right. That's where we will let the user know if they screwed up. All right, so I just added this. I think that's really, after I went back and redid this, that's the only thing I've added in here. So File, Save All. All right. So when we do this, then we want to let the user know they didn't enter a valid temperature. So in other words, that message is going to be this. You must enter a valid number for degrees. All right. So now you'll notice we're using text content here. If we're filling up what's going into a text box, all right, then we're going to be using value. All right, but for most, I guess it just depends on the control. So here we're going to say equal, and we could have made this a constant, but you must enter a valid number for degrees. I put a number sign in there so it would all fit on the same line. All right, so that's first thing we want to do is let them know. Can we look at that now? Let's do a file, save all, and I'm going to run this, and I'm going to put nothing in there and see if I get the message down here. There it is. All right, it's not centered, it's not red, but that's okay. We can go back and change that in the CSS in just a moment. There's nothing to compute. So there's going to be nothing in here. And we can select the degrees entered, so they can just manually change it. Now there's different things we can do here. We can do a select, and remember, all that'll do is it will highlight it, all right, and it will make it blue in the highlight. In fact, let's go in here and do one more thing quickly. That is, let's go into the CSS, and that message, I believe that message was an ID. So I'm going to come in here and say text align center, and text, not text, font color. In fact, it's not that, it's just color, red. See if that changed that we had before. So if we put nothing in there, you must enter a valid number for degrees, and it's centered. All right, well, that works now. And if we wanted to, you weren't told to do this, but we also could, if we really wanted to, come in here and say, what is it? Font weight bold. If we wanted to do that. And of course, this could be pound FF0000, which would be the better way of doing it. So save all. This will now be bolded down here. You can see that it is. Okay. All right. So we're still not done. And if we get down to here, well, we need, because that means that everything that we tried to validate, it was valid. So what we put in there was valid. So what do we want to do? All right. Well, one thing we want to make sure is if there was that message there, we want to get rid of it. So this message right here, this text content should be equal to nothing. That's first thing. All right. And then we have to compute and display the temperature, but we have to know which radio button was clicked. All right. So if the one that's called 2 Celsius, doesn't matter which one of these you check first, of course, but if that dot checked, well, then we've got to do the 1 calculation. Now, this is where we could have done the calculation right in here, but remember, we have this helper function called calculate Celsius rather, and the other one called calculate Fahrenheit. So now we can come in here and we can just say, and you could, we don't need anything in here. We could just do a 2 fixed to 0. We don't even really have to. Probably would work okay without it, but in fact, let's put a 0 because that should round then. Otherwise, well, we want to go the other way. Okay, so with the else, what we want in there is I'm going to copy this, but instead of saying calculate Celsius, I'm going to say calculate Fahrenheit. Like that. Now, what doesn't it like here? Oh, that should say if, not egg. How's that? All right. And then down here, we've got our 2 Celsius equals display this, and our 2 Fahrenheit equals display that. Okay. And down here, we've got our convert, our 2 Celsius, our 2 Fahrenheit, and our focus. I think we've got everything. Let's just take a quick look. So if I put in 0 degrees Fahrenheit and I go to Celsius, that's like -17 or something like that, or -18. Okay, I'm getting nothing. Oops. And you probably don't believe this, but when I'm getting nothing, I think that's good because I'm coming in here and you get to watch me debug. All right. So again, looks like it's on line 37. As you can tell, again, I forgot the pound sign. I don't do that on purpose. I screw up naturally enough anyway. So let me go back to here and run it again. Let's first go Celsius to Fahrenheit. All right. So 0 here, 32, that is correct. When I go the other way and I go 0F, all right, that should be like -17 point whatever, I guess -18. There you go. So it worked. It actually rounded it up because it's actually -17.777778 or something like that. All right. If I put in from Fahrenheit to Celsius, if I put in 100 here, I think it's 34. Oh, close, 38. And if I go the other way, all right, that should be 212, I believe. Yeah. So it all works. So let's take a quick look and go on to the next one. All right. So again, in here, the only thing that was added, as always, is I changed mine to CSS and to JS, but I added this. That's that message that went at the bottom. It certainly wouldn't have hurt to put that in its own div. All right. I mean, there's a lot of ways this could have been done. Okay, it could have been a div instead of a paragraph, etc. It doesn't really matter that much. Just an empty area. So right now it's an empty paragraph that we're filling up. All right. CSS file, I added this. So I took that message that we just put in. Again, that one is this one. I message. All right. Centered it, made it red, and bolded it. So let me get rid of that. Let me get rid of that. And we'll bring up this one. All right. Then we came up into here. And in our use strict and our alias, we added down here these two helper functions. All right. Again, we could have done those right in here rather than writing another function. It would have been fine to do that. A little cleaner this way. All right. This, as it says, is where we're toggling the displays. So it's figuring out, all right, what text we want depending on which radio button we have. All right. And then our convert, we're checking to make sure that it's numeric. Okay, if it's not, so we didn't even run that one, so let's try that one. So if I put in here that, all right, you must enter a value for degrees. I thought it would have highlighted it like this. For some reason, it's not. All right. But that's usually what the select does. Personally, I wouldn't have, I try to show you that you can do that. Could have also just done this instead of saying select. We could have just said dot value equals nothing. There's a lot of ways that you can handle this. All right, if we get down to here, we had a valid temperature. All right, and all we're saying is it was a number. So that message, we're making sure that there's nothing in there. Then we're checking to see which one of these is checked. All right, I did it with an if else, but basically this else, what that one means is this. I'm just going to put it here, oops, as a comment. Because what we're really saying there is Fahrenheit. Like that. All right, that's what the else means. So we're calling the correct calculate Celsius or calculate Fahrenheit. All right. Then over here, notice our 2 Celsius. As it says, that's calling the toggle display that we had up above, and it's letting us know enter F degrees Celsius, or enter C degrees Fahrenheit. Everything is down at the bottom, and everything is inside of our DOM content loaded. We are setting up 3 event handlers here. One that is going to be called when we click the convert temp button. We click the convert button. One that will be called when we click the 2 Celsius. All right, when we click the 2 Celsius radio button. And this is if we click the 2 Fahrenheit radio button. All right. So that is that particular one. And Chad, sorry to keep leaning on you, Grant, but any questions on that one?
No, I understand it. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Let's save that. Okay. So what else was here? Well, the next one was this test scores thing. So let me bring it up. I don't want to bring it up like that. Get rid of these. I got a lot of stuff open here. All right. Let's bring that up. Again, the FAQs one I'm going to ask that you guys do yourselves. All right, but open this with code. All right, and let's look at our requirements. I'll go till about 10:25. We'll take a break for 10 minutes, and then we still should be done by around 11. All right, so let's see. There we go. That was the one we just finished. So All right, use a test score array. In this exercise, very similar to what we did before, but now notice we have an average and we even have a high score. All right, so it's not that different from what I just showed you, except we'll add the high score, all right, as well as the average. So you will work with an array and you'll add nodes to the DOM to display the results and the test scores. What's different? Well, what's different is there's no text area in here. So we're adding this stuff right to the web page itself, all right, by adding nodes to the document object model, all right? So it says the interface after clicking results and display should look something like this, all right? So if the user enters invalid data, just like we had before, okay? So we don't, we got enough. So open it, run the app, anything till you developed a JavaScript. You'll see the declaration for the two arrays. That's nothing new. You'll also see the code for the alias function. That's nothing new. All right, that attaches the three functions, add score, add display results, and display scores, kind of like we just did previously. Write the display results. The reason I wanted to go through this one is to show you the difference between when we did it previously using that text box and the way that we're doing it now when we're actually writing nodes to the DOM, so you can see that. All right. If you haven't already done so, add data. Yeah, that's all fine. All right, so let's take a quick look at that one. All right. Let's start by looking at here and seeing if we have to add anything here. Notice we've got, again, a span here and a span there, and currently, at least, they're empty. We've got our three buttons: add to the array, display results, and display scores. Results and scores. I don't think there's anything else we have to add in here. Again, we always could put asterisks in there to let the user know that something they put in was mandatory. They chose to do that with the MPG one and not do it with the other ones for whatever reason, which is fine. All right, so let's take a look then at the associated JavaScript. We've got our use strict, we've got our alias, we set up our two arrays, nothing new there. All right, now we're going to come in here and we're actually going to write right up on top here. All right, we're going to write some code up on here. We're going to write our code to add the score. All right, and we're going to add some code to display the results and the average. All right, and we'll put those all up above here. What do I mean? Well, it says here that when we click the button that says add, we should call an add score, which we currently don't have. And it says here that when we click the button that says display results, we should call something called display results, which we don't have, and display scores. So we're going to add all three of those in here right now. All right. In addition, we're going to add, this is the first time you're really going to see this. All right. We're going to add some almost pure DOM coding, because it tells us that we're supposed to come in there and we're supposed to, at least for part of it, use H2 tags. So we're going to come in here and do this. If I confused you. Mhm. You don't have to call it element. It oftentimes is because you're using create element. Usually a person will either call that element or just LEL. All right, that's a mouthful right there. All right, but basically what we're doing is we're telling it to go in and add that new tag, which will be the H2, and then basically the text that goes with it, and then append it. So in other words, we're getting ready to put it down on the bottom of our page. All right. Hopefully when you see it in action in a couple minutes, it'll make some sense. So again, we need now an add score, a display results, and a display scores. So let's put those in. They are name and score. All right. I'm going to make this an integer. You probably aren't going to put for a score something that has a decimal place in it. It's not that you couldn't, but you probably wouldn't. All right. Again, if we wanted to, I'm not showing it here, but what we could do, let's see, this is in our add score. We could also come in here just like we did before and say const min score equals 0 and const max score equal 100. You don't have to do that. All right. By no means is that mandatory. So and we also want to valid as false there. So please enter a name, enter score. All right. But now we're literally using nodes to do that stuff. So we are creating this stuff, for lack of better words, on the fly, as opposed to the way we did it before, where we had those spans in there that we were changing. Now, what most people will say is when you first are learning this stuff, I mean, listen to instructors say, hey, if when you're first learning this, man, keep away from the DOM whenever you can. It's just hard. But it gives you more power because there's almost nothing you can't do with this. All right. All right. So if it's valid, then we want to come in and do some stuff, right? So if is valid, well, what do we want to do? The same stuff we did before. Names, name dot length equal name, scores, scores dot length equals score. Then we want to clear out the node. And finally, regardless of whether it was valid or wasn't valid, we want to set the focus back to the name node. All right. So let's see if that works. We're almost done. Good. But if we put stuff in here that, oops. Well, we'll have to make sure that that's gone. And we've got to write these. Okay. So we've got to write the other two routines. Neither one of them is particularly long. I'd say they're both about, actually the display results is probably 25 lines long, and the display scores is about 10 lines long. So I'll tell you what, because I said I'd give you a break now. It is 10:24. Let's take a break till 10:35, and we'll finish this one and quickly look at the one with creating the clock. Okay, see you at 10:35. All right, it is 10:35. We were asked to write 3 functions. The first one was add score. So the idea is if we put in something valid here and we put in something valid here and we click add to array, that should work. Okay, so that's a start. Don't worry about these for right now, okay? But the next one that we're told to add in here after add score is display results. That's about 30 lines, and the display scores is about 10 lines. So the results is all that extra stuff we're going to add at the bottom. Oh, and if you look in here, when we mention this stuff, so what we've done, so, oops, not there. What we've done is we have put in this and we've implemented the add here, and you already saw that. So now what we want is this stuff. So we not only want the average, but for the high score, we want to know who had the high score and what the high score was. All right. So that'll be high score name. And let's put a couple comments in here so you know what's going on. All right. So this will be the sum of all test scores. This will be the highest test score. This will be name of person with highest test score. And this will be the average test score. All right, so what are we doing here? Well, loop through arrays. We could pick either array here, but we're using the scores one. So loop through the scores array. Add current test score to score total. Check to see if we have a new high score. All right, just like that. Now, the only thing on here, just so you know, we're checking greater than, which is fine. But let's say that Bob comes in and Bob gets a 99 and his is the high score. Well, it'll say Bob with score of 99. Now Mary comes in and she gets a 99. Well, 99 is not greater than 99. So it'll only find the first one. So if we have multiple people, with the same high score, all right, it's only going to list the first one. That's not a terrible thing. All right. So we've got all that done. So we're, basically, this is what we wanted to do inside of our for loop here. because that's figuring out everything. All right, so now we can calculate the average. And I put in parens so I can do a .2 fixed on there. And we just will put it to no decimal places. If we didn't care, all right, or if we wanted it, let's do it to 2 decimal places. How's that? All right. Now we have to fill up our DOM elements. All right, so that header node right there, where we're saying create element with text H2, that's going to go up and it's going to call this, and the tag name we're passing in is H2, and the text we're passing in is results. So in other words, let me get rid of that. There we go. In other words, what we're doing in there is this, results. That's what we're doing right there. All right. Then we're going to need a paragraph that's going to have this and another paragraph that's going to have this. Then we have to basically go and reproduce this as well. So what we have in here are 1, 2, 3, 4, all right, 5 things basically that we're producing in this particular and in fact that this one is what we'll be doing next in the next routine, the scores. So basically it's all the junk we have to do in here, but we're doing it using DOM elements as opposed to the way that we did it before. All right, why? Because we're asked to. All right. In fact, let's put this over 2 lines because it's going to run off the page otherwise. Why don't we do it like this? It'll be a P, but let's use in here template literals because we haven't been working with those for a while. All right, so that's going to equal right. There we go. Let's move this down too. And again, all I'm doing is putting this on 2 lines just so it shows a little better. So this average score here, that you see in blue right there, that is what we're doing to represent just this average score equal and then the average score. So we'll do a similar one now for the high score. Okay, in just a second. In fact, to try to make it a little easier, I'm going to copy this and just make some changes to it. So it's okay. We'll fix that error in just a moment. So this will be high score. All right. And this will be again a paragraph and it'll say high score equal. and we want it to say high score name. And then with a high score of, and then the scores. Let me move this over. That should be it. Make sure I'm saying what they say in the book here, in our PDF. So that'll be high score equals, then the name with a score of, and that'll be the score. Okay, that looks correct. All right, still a little bit more to do here. Again, when you're working with the DOM like this, it's quirkier, for lack of better words. All right, because there's more stuff that you have to handle. So we've created this stuff now, but we have not yet actually put it on the screen. That's what we're going to do here. So this is going to be a div that's going to hold our results. So in English, what this is saying is, if there wasn't anything down there previously, we're going to do an append child. But if there was already something there, so in other words, when we get into here, okay, if there already was this stuff in there previously, if it had not been removed, then instead of doing an append child, we will do a replace child. Copy these down. That's a little harder because you have to say, where are you replacing it? And what are you replacing it with? All right, so mercifully, that's the end of that one. So the only thing that's left to do is to display the scores rather at the bottom. And that's not hard. We just have to give it a heading, and then we have to loop through and print out all the scores. And I believe then we're going to be finished. Not there, sorry. I said it's about 10 lines or so. I want to clear out anything that might have been in there. And let's see, we added our event handlers. Click to add score, display. The only other thing I would like to do is when we first start, I like the focus to be on the name. So. Well, let's see if it works. Or if I screwed something up. All right, so we'll say Bill, and Bill got 3. Add him, display the results, not showing anything. Display the scores. That's working, and Bill is in there. All right, so the first 4 plus Bill, that isn't working though, the display results. Let's click display results again, nothing happened. Failed to execute replace child, parameter 2 is not of type node. All right, so it's line 89. To do all that typing and only have 1 error is pretty surprising, in my opinion. So div replace child. Node. It's actually correct. Oh, not chili, child. That might have been what it was. All right. Say Mary, she got a 80. Add it to the array, display the results, still isn't showing. We've got Mary, so why isn't that showing? Failed to execute, staying on line 89. Yep, it doesn't like this. Node. That actually is correct. So. And it is called header node, AVG score node, and high score node. Sibling, high score node 2 last child. Parameter 2 is not of type node, so it doesn't like that. The div.firstChild it's complaining about. The only thing I could think of, and I went back and changed it in here, was originally I'd had in here just 2 equal signs, but that shouldn't matter. Oh, now it's at least giving me output, so that's good. Average score equals average score. High score equals high score name. Doesn't like these, so let me double check. That's working just fine, but that is not. So let's see where I set that up. Results, average score, no, next, average score equals average score. That looks correct. So high score name with a high score of.
Do you need the $sign in front of the curly braces for those? In front of average score and
Oh,
high
yeah,
score?
you're right. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, that would probably do it. Here and here. I think that's what you're saying. Let's see. That's a good catch on your part. And we'll have Barney, who got a 47. Yep, you're right. Now it didn't put Barney in there, so I'll have to look at that. That's no biggie. That we can look at, but let's put in a new high score. So, Grant got 100. All right, it does seem like it's, and it did not add the score here. All right. Could have done the same thing down below too. Score, average score. Well, I'll tell you what, rather than wasting your time, I'm not going to do that. All right, I will look at this as soon as I get done today. And when we talk tomorrow will be a lab, but I will talk for the first 5 minutes. I'm going to go over the test, the pretest tomorrow instead of doing it today. So I'll try to fix that during that time too. All right. So not sure what happened there, but let's look in here in chapter 7. Let's look on the clock and you can figure out the stopwatch one. If you run it now, it looks like this, but there's no time in it. All right. So let's fix that. Again, you will do the modify the facts. So in this exercise, you'll create an application that displays the current time in hours, minutes, and seconds. It should use a 12-hour clock to indicate AM or PM, so you can see what it should look like. To convert from a 24 to a 12, see if the hours is greater than 12. If it is, subtract 12 from it. So for instance, 9 o'clock at night would be 2100. So if you subtract 12, you'd make sure to change it to PM. All right, open the folder. We'll do that in a second. 4 functions are supplied. In the current time, add code that uses the date to determine the current hour, minute, and second. Convert these to the 12-hour format. In the document content loaded, code a timer that displays the current time and changes every second. All right, I don't think that sounds bad. So let's see. So taking it from the top then, let's first see if there's anything we have to change in here. I don't think there was. Hours, minutes, seconds. Again, I changed mine because I used my JavaScript folder and my CSS folder. So let's go in here. We've got our use strict, we've got our alias, we've got this pad, so that's a helper function. All that's going to do is if any of the three, the hour, the minute, or the second are less than 10, it will put a 0 in for the first character. All right. So we have to, not too much in here. Let's take a look. So display the current time. And with all this stuff, there's the word now. You could call it anything you wanted. All right. And the same thing with the AM, PM, but they just made sense to use those. All right. So if the hours are greater than 12, we want to convert from military time basically to regular time with the AM, PM. And it is PM, so we want to let the person know that it's PM. All right. Otherwise, and you may or may not have thought of this, so we could do it as an if as well. But in the case where it's noon, all right, or midnight, we got to make sure we handle it correctly. So if it's 12, well, if it is midnight, we still want it to say 12, but 12 a.m. All right. So that'll set everything up for us, but then we've got to go and add it to what we've been working on. So doing basically same thing with seconds. All right. And then adding this, well, the first thing we want to do is display the current time. So when the first comes up, it has the right time. And then we want to do our timer. So set interval. This must be a set interval. Keep calling display current time every second. First, let me save it, then we'll go back, take a quick look at it, and that'll be it for the period. So. Well, it started. Some reason it's not incrementing, but we'll look at that in a second. But it is filling up everything, so that's a start. All right, so taking it from the top. Okay, our use strict, our alias, our const, pad, single digit. We were given all this stuff. All right, and we were given an empty display current time. So this is creating what's called a new date object. That new date object actually has in it hours, minutes, seconds. All right, so it has that, plus it has the actual date. So it has really first, it has the month, the day, the year, then the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. I believe it even has milliseconds. All we're using here are hours and minutes and seconds. So, all right, let hours equal now dot get hours. Let AM PM, we're saying we're setting it equal. This is just giving it an initial value. It shouldn't matter. If our hours are greater than 12, we want to subtract 12. That just use the shortcut there, change it to PM. Otherwise, we're doing a switch on hours. Should really put a break in here too. It's just good practice. Could even have a default in there that just said break. That should never, ever be hit, but it's just good practice to put that in anyway. All right. Then we're coming in to set this stuff. Oh, one thing I didn't set was the AM PM in here. Right. Hours, minutes, seconds, AM, PM. That looks good. That looks good to me. Oh, that should say display current time. I don't know how I left that out of there. It was calling a non-existing function every second. So let's see if that fixed it. And there we go. And if I refresh, starts up again. All right, so one last time, quickly looking through this, changed nothing on the HTML and on the JS. This was all given up till right here. So we came in here under our display time and set now equal to a new date object. Hours is now dot get hours. AM PM we set to AM by default. Then we check to see if the hours were greater than 12. If they were greater than 12, all right, then we were adding or subtracting 12 from it. The problem is, okay, with both midnight and noon, they're both greater than 12 technically. All right. So if we do use the regular 12 in here, that's going to be 12 noon. This is going to be the 12 midnight. And we would get 0. I guess technically, if we're going by a 24-hour clock, I'd have to change the time to check that for sure. And then finally, we already had, oh, we didn't have this. This sets up the clock. So and then finally, we had to call display current time, but we had to, that called it initially. So that's when we first started. And this set interval called it again every 1 second. Display current time was right here. All right, that was a little quick. Any questions on that one?
No, that was pretty straightforward.
Okay, so you will have to go and fix and do that one with the let's see. The two that you'll have to do from scratch basically are, we did all these, but are both on here. The digital clock with a stopwatch, so you will add these, and it's just adding 3 timers. All right, or at least a timer to start. All right, and then telling it to stop, and then resetting it is just resetting those values. The other one that you'll have to do yourself then will be modifying the FAQ application. All right, so I will come back tomorrow. I already gave you the next pretest, but rather than spending 10 or 15 minutes on it now and possibly screwing it up, I'll wait till tomorrow, and I'll also do my darndest to try to fix the problem that we had with this one to get all this stuff to show. All right, so unless you have any other questions, that'll be it for today.
I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye.